Okay, let's take a look here. Make sure everything is ready. Let's see, that's turned off, that's off, that's off, that's on, and the stream appears to be live. I think we're ready to go. So let's get this started. Hello, Shadowcat back! And I have to imagine I'm back with something that people are probably getting tired of at this point. But, while it might be a little on the boring side for some people, maybe, I'm not sure. The fact is, it is important and we have to do it, otherwise this entire module just isn't going to work. And I'm actually enjoying myself. Now, that's because I'm the one actually doing it, and so if you're just watching, maybe that's different for you. But I'm enjoying going through all of these rules and trying to convert them over. This is, I think, one of the more ambitious projects that I've done, just not because of the scale of it, but because of how much work has to go into actually converting things. Like with Warhammer 40k, there was a lot to convert, but at the same time, we weren't exactly taking one of the codices and trying to convert the direct numbers straight from the codex into Starfinder rules. We took the lore and then we adapted the lore into Pathfinder and said, now we have Warhammer in this setting. This one, though, we are taking the actual rules and trying to make a one-for-one conversion from what does this mean here and what does it mean here. Same rule, two different interpretations. It's a challenge. And it's one that I'm enjoying. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into that. But before we do, obviously if you're here, I'd love it if you go ahead and like the stream. That would be fantastic. And we'll check the chat. I see that Blizzard Star is in the chat. So, Blizzard Star, you're going to get a wave. As soon as I get there. There we go. There's a wave. Good to see you here. And of course, we'll wave to new people as they come in. In the meantime, though, let's go ahead and get to work. So, of course, we're going to need our browser. And we'll need a spreadsheet to work on. And we'll need to see where we left off. Oh, and the last time we were here, I had been working on a few of these, and I decided to leave Dredge undone. The reason being is that before I can really do Dredge, I think we have to do the other keywords. See, these are keyword abilities. We also have keyword actions. And perhaps I should have started with the keyword actions, because I don't think that I can do Dredge until I deal with the keyword actions. I'm just not sure about that one. But I also don't want to stop in the middle of this and switch over to keyword actions, because I want to try and finish this, if I can. So that's the goal. That's what we're going to try and do. So let's see how many of these things we can get through today. Next up on the list is Suspend, which should be in here somewhere. There it is. What is Suspend? Suspend is a keyword ability debuted in Time Spiral. It's comprehensive. Okay. Suspend is a keyword that represents 3 abilities. Oh, no. I don't want it to be 3 abilities. Okay, hold on. The first is a static ability that allows you to exile the card from your hand with the specified number of time counters, the number before the dash, on it by paying its suspend cost, listed after the dash. The second is a triggered ability that removes a time counter from the suspended card at the beginning of each of your upkeeps. The third is a triggered ability that causes you to cast the card when the last time counter is removed. If you cast a creature spell in this way, it gains haste until you lose control of that creature, or in rare cases, you lose control of the creature's spell while it's on the stack. It lets you save mana on casting spells by committing to surviving many turns in advance. If one is uncertain on making their land drop, Suspend helps the player use their mana otherwise. Okay, I think I understand this. Let's take a look at an example, because I think I get it. So here we go. Here's an example. So this is If, the High Arcanist. It normally costs 7 to play, which you can't see that. Let me scroll down a little bit. There we go. If the Arcanist normally costs 7 to play. That's 5 plus white-blue. It's a 3/5 with Vigilance, and if you tap it, you can untap an attacking creature, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to them, basically undo their attack. However, you can suspend them. And it says suspend 4, and if you do that, it only costs white-blue. So as I understand it, you can pay this card for white-blue, and it comes in with 4 counters on it. After 4 turns, it will simply come into being. You know, this one's not actually as hard as I thought it would be. It says it's 3 abilities in 1, but it's not that complex. Is there something else? How about the Lotus Bloom? So this is just an artifact. It has no mana cost. It does come in with Suspend, but it costs 0 to play. So, you can just put it into play because it does cost 0. It comes in with 3 Suspend counters. Every turn a counter goes away until it's there, and then you can sacrifice it to add 3 mana of any one color. It's basically a Black Lotus from Wish.com. Alright, so this seems easy. For Suspend, we pretty much just have to copy the rules over. So the spell comes into effect after the suspend counter hits 0. No, that's not right, because we're not really doing that necessarily. Comes into effect after a number of turns equal to the suspend count. I cannot type today. It's because of the snow outside. I blame the snow. I would blame the snow for pretty much anything, but, you know, this is as good a time as any. Alright, spell comes into effect after a number of turns equal to the suspend count. So you're allowed to cast the spell, and then it will simply come into play. Now, this is actually really interesting, because literally, this effect is in here to allow you to play cards with a higher value if you don't have the mana. Now, I have not restricted any of the cards by level. I am planning on restricting cards by rarity, where common spells will be easy to attain, uncommons will be harder to find, and rare spells you may actually have to go looking for. That restriction alone is going to help balance out the games because more powerful cards tend to be more rare. However, I'm not planning on restricting anything by mana cost. If you are a level 2 Planeswalker, I see no reason why you cannot have a card that costs 7. I do think that it would be, in general, foolish to choose a spell that costs 7 when you are only level 2. But I am the Game Master. I am here to run the game. I am not here to stop you from making stupid decisions. Okay, I'm kind of here to stop that, but at the same time, you are welcome to make those decisions if you want. This offers an alternative. Now, with this character, does it say how rare you are? I don't think it says how rare you are. Let's just click on this. What's the rarity on this card? It says legendary, so I assume it's there. Okay, it's up here. You can't see it, but I can. It's number 255. It is a rare, meaning that there is almost no chance that you would be able to summon this guy into being, because you'd have to like meet him first, and he's literally one person. His name is Ith. It's a lot different than getting some kind of just random soldier, you know, because soldier cards are white and just random soldier, okay? So you're on a battlefield, you see this random soldier, and you're just like, huh, that could be handy someday. And so you commit that random soldier to memory, and now you can summon them. You don't know what their name is, you don't know what their personality is. It's just a random soldier that you can deal with. I see this as being a very interesting mechanic that you could use if you had the spells available. Now, I don't necessarily know how many there are. Let's see. According to the statistics, there are 66 cards with Suspend. Surely within that many cards, there must be some that are common that you could potentially use. I do believe that this is a way that you could become a very powerful planeswalker. But again, it's one of those things where you would have to wait. So yes, you get a very powerful card, but this is no different than in, say, Pathfinder or even D&D 5e, using, what are they called? Rituals. That's it. Rituals can take time too, produce greater effects than just normal spells. But there's a lot more caveats on them. So okay, I think we're good here. I like it. Suspend is good. That's a good trait. Or a good ability. Okay, next. Vanishing. Alright, so Vanishing is a keyword ability that limits the number of turns a permanent can remain on the battlefield using time as a resource. It was introduced in the Time Spiral block, serving as an update to the earlier Fading ability with more intuitive mechanics. It can be considered an inversion of the Suspend ability. Right, so I kind of assumed that when I saw it. Vanishing is just going to be, it comes in with X counters, and then it's just gone. It says that Vanishing was Planar Chaos's twist on Nemesis's Fading mechanic, but more intuitive to play due to the lack of delay after the last counter is removed. It's also more compatible with other Time Spiral block mechanics, in particular Suspend, as the two abilities are inversions of each other. So since it's similar to Fading, can we just copy Fading? Here we go. It's right here. The spell lasts a number of rounds equal to the Fade counter. The spell ends at the end of the one turn. The same thing is going to be true here, except it's going to be Vanishing. So if I check out an example, Keldon Marauders. Keldon Marauders cost 2 to play, they're 3/3s, and they have Vanishing 2. They enter the battlefield with 2 counters. At return, you remove a counter. When the last counter is removed, sacrifice it. So essentially, it disappears at the beginning of that turn. So it's there in the first turn with 2 counters. It's there on the second turn with 1 counter. On the third turn, you remove that counter, and it's gone. So very similar. What I do believe is we can copy this actually. And we'll paste it down here. And we're just going to change some words here. So it goes away when the last counter is removed, meaning that we're going to replace Fade with Vanishing. And the spell is going to end at the beginning of the 0 turn. And that should be all we need to do for that one. So again, you'll have to keep track of the counter on your creature. You can do this with a simple dice. Just keep turning the die down. So it'll come in, you'll put your die on a 2. On its next turn, you turn that to a 1. On your next turn, you simply remove the die, and at the same time, the creature token will be gone. Very simple, very easy, and I think that that's going to work out well. So now we move on to the next one. Absorb. Absorb is a damage prevention ability, written as Absorb N, where N is any natural number. It prevents N damage from each single source that deals damage to a creature. It's part of Future Sight, and it appears on exactly 1 card. Really? Okay, by its name, let's see. This was inspired by a mechanic Wizards of the Coast had made for the Star Wars trading card game called Armor. It ended up being a little bit too powerful and stalled the game too much to reuse in greater numbers. As such, when the effect was reused for Shield of the Realm in Dominaria, it wasn't even made a keyword ability. And Shield of the Realm is right here. Let's see, if a source would deal damage to the equipped creature, prevent 2 of that damage. Fair enough. So what is it? What is the 1? It's a sliver! Of course it's a sliver. Naturally it would be a sliver. All sliver creatures have Absorb 1. If a source would deal damage to that sliver, prevent 1 of that damage. I mean, we gotta do it because technically speaking, somebody could actually use it, although I'm inclined to just ban slivers. Nobody likes slivers, and nobody likes sliver players, okay? I'm just putting it out there. Nobody likes you. Okay, so literally, this is just going to be damage reduction. It's literally what it says, reduce the damage. So Absorb is DRX, where X is the Absorb number. And that's simple. That's literally all it is. Alright, next is going to be Aura Swap. Alright, so, again, this is Future Sight, and this is on exactly 1 card. So let's do exchange an aura that has it for an aura in your hand. Okay. By nature, this ability, or its blue ability, has only been printed on 1 aura so far. Arcanum Wings. Mark Rosewater considers the chance of it ever being reprinted likely, probably in a set with an aura sub-theme, but he considers it a dangerous mechanic in that it lets you circumvent mana costs. So what we have is Arcanum Wings. And this is a weird card. It does not even have a mana cost on it. So literally the only way to play it is with Aura Swap. Enchant creature has flying, and it has Aura Swap. So you pay 3 and you can exchange this for another aura. I mean, I guess we're gonna do it. I'm literally just going to copy this. Now, this actually is going to have some pretty significant implications. Although, when I think about it, I think it's kind of useless. So we're going to default format, then we're going to format paint. And we're just going to change, this. So for another aura in your hand, I'm just going to say another aura spell you know. And since, you know, there's only one card that has it, your options are kind of limited. I gotta say, though, paying 3 to give a creature flight. Like, right off the top of my head. Okay, right off the top of my head. Nurok Hoversail. This is a card that I actually have. This is an equipment card. It costs 1 to play, and it costs 2 to equip. And since artifacts do not necessarily suffer from summoning sickness, or at least as far as I understand, you can literally play and equip the Nurok Hoversail onto any creature in 1 turn, which means that this card right here will do the same thing as that aura. And when the creature it's attached to dies, it drops the Nurok Hoversail, which you can then equip to an entirely different creature. The only thing stopping you from using this is that I guess you would need to, like, have observed it at some point. But even then, that's a lore rule, and that's not even a game rule. This aura swap card, Arcanum Wings, this seems pointless. This is a bad card. Oh, no, wait, okay, I see. There actually is a mana cost on it. I read it wrong. It's a weird-looking card. It's on the right side. I hate this art style. Okay, yeah, it's there. Never mind. Point being, though, even if it costs just 2, I don't get it. Unless the idea is that you can swap this one for an aura that you know. At which point, then, I guess if you had like a really high mana cost aura, you cast Arcanum Wings on them, and then you swap Arcanum Wings for the other one? That actually makes a little bit more sense. Okay, I think that's how that works, actually. That must be the way it works. So you can take a really expensive one and then slip it in there, which I'm actually good with. Again, this seems kind of like Suspend, where this is a way to use a little bit of mana to get a high-cost card out, but it's going to take you more time. With Suspend, you have to wait for the Suspend counter to come down. With this one, you have to spend 1 turn playing it, and then on the next turn you can swap it. But again, only if you have the appropriate enchantment. I can see how, as they were saying, it does let you circumvent mana costs, and so it could be very dangerous. But we'll work with that. We'll work with that. Okay, next is Delve. And I think this might be one that we skip, actually. Delve was introduced in Future Sight. Delve is a static ability that functions while a spell with Delve is on the stack. Delve means for each generic mana in the spell's total cost, you may exile a card from your graveyard rather than pay that cost. So, here's the problem with that. I'm not sure how we're going to work this one. So, Delve was only printed on 27 cards, and in Future Sight it was only printed on 3 of them. So, for example, Death Rattle. This is an instant card. It costs 6 to play. Destroy a target non-green creature. It can't be regenerated. Which seems kind of ridiculous. I mean, pay 6 for a destroy card? We have cards like Fear for that. Let's see. But Delve. You may exile any number of cards from your graveyard as you cast this spell. It costs 1 less to cast for each card exiled in this way. How are we even going to do that? Because we don't have rules for exile yet. And how could we exile? Because we don't actually have a graveyard. This again was part of the problem with Dredge. We don't have a graveyard to go through. And so Dredge and Delve are kind of in the same boat. I'm not sure how we're going to work these. And that's the only example they give. Until we can figure out how the graveyard is going to work, I don't have a really good example. So I think we're going to skip this one until we can figure exactly how the graveyard is going to work. Again, this is one of those things that we may need rules for before we can do it. Oh, PC Unicorn's in the chat. Hello, PC Unicorn. You get a wave. And PC Unicorn says, exile doesn't involve the graveyard, really. Exile should just evaporate from the field. Okay. The problem with that is, though, that I think it literally says... yeah, Delve. Each card that you exile from your graveyard specifically while casting the spell. So while you might be right about the whole exile thing not being specific to a graveyard, this ability specifically is. So again, we come back to the same problem of I don't know what we are going to do about the graveyard. Because we just don't have one. So again, I think we're going to come back to this one. I don't have the rules right now. I don't have the knowledge to do it. And PC says, oh, we're on Delve. Sorry, just got here. That's okay. I'm glad to have you here regardless. Okay, the next one is going to be Fortify. Hopefully this one's going to be a lot easier. Okay, Fortify is a keyword that appears on fortifications. It functions the same as Equip, except that it targets a land instead of a creature. Now see, this is one that I'm a little bit excited for. Although maybe I shouldn't be excited because it only appears on 2 cards. So what does it do? Fortify was introduced in Future Sight on the Future Shifted Darksteel Garrison. Okay, you had me at Darksteel. It's been considered the mechanic difficult to implement as the fortification needs to be distinct from auras, but R&D's stance on land destruction limits the ability to put powerful effects on fortifications. This also limits the utility of fortifications. In spite of these difficulties, R&D introduced a new card with Fortify in the universes beyond, and that was the Fallout Commander deck, which, given that it is a franchise set, I'm not concerned with it. So let's look at the Darksteel Garrison and see what we've got. Darksteel Garrison, and it's got that same card art style that I hate. Glad they didn't stick with this. Let's see. So it's an artifact of fortification. Fortified land is indestructible. Whenever a fortified land becomes targeted, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Well, that seems pointless, but Yeah, sure, okay. Fortified 3. Attach it to a land. Interesting. Now, I wonder if this is the same as equipment. I wonder if the land ever was destroyed... Well, no, it's indestructible. It can't be destroyed. Can't be destroyed, can't be sacrificed. It could only be exiled. I don't see a reason to really worry about this. But here's the interesting thing about this. After we get done going through all of the keywords, we're going to have to go through all of the equipments and creatures. Now, when it comes to equipments, let me duplicate this tab so I can come up here. Equipment. Okay. Equipment is an artifact subtype that has the equip word ability. Now, I don't... Oh, hey. I know that one. That's the Bone Splitter. I actually have that axe. Sorry, random tangent. Anyway, it has the equip keyword by paying the equip cost, which can only be done as a sorcery speed. It attaches to a creature you control. If that creature leaves play, the equipment becomes unattached and remains in play. They essentially just drop it. I wonder, however, do they... Are there different kinds? Because here's the thing. I think there's just general equipments. Equipment is equipment, period. We'll have to go through and, like, find a way to specify different equipments, but here's what I'm imagining. Because with Fortify, again, you only have the one, and it's the Darksteel Garrison. Again, you got to stick with me on this one. It's a garrison. When I picture this, when I picture the Darksteel Garrison, I am picturing a planeswalker being able to literally summon a garrison. Now, this is not unheard of. So, if we come back to Pathfinder and we look into the arcane spells. Come on. Can I spell? There we go. Mage's Magnificent Mansion. This is a higher level spell. Specifically, it is a level 7 wizard spell. And what it does is this. You conjure up an extra-dimensional dwelling that has a single entrance on the plane from which the spell was cast. Essentially, you're just creating a door. You create a doorway, and it leads from this plane into a different plane. The entry point looks like a faint shimmering in the air, 4 feet wide and 8 feet high. Only those you designate may enter the mansion, and the portal is shut and made invisible behind you when you enter. You may open it again from your side at will. Once observers have passed beyond the entrance, they are in the magnificent foyer with numerous chambers beyond. The atmosphere is clean, fresh, and warm. You can create any floor plan you desire to the limit of the spell's effect. It is furnished and contains sufficient foodstuffs to serve a 9-course banquet to a dozen people per caster level. This is a level 7 spell. So your caster level is going to be like 11, 12, something like that. So that's like 12 days of food for 12 people. Yeah. But it only lasts for 2 hours per level, so it's not like you can stay there for 12 days. Anyway, a staff of near-transparent servants, as many as 2 per caster level, liveried and obedient, wait upon all who enter. These servants function as unseen servant spells, except that they are visible and can go anywhere in the mansion. You can literally conjure an entire pocket dimension using Mage's Magnificent Mansion, I don't see why you could not also summon this. So, this would normally be used to enchant a land. Instead, what I believe we're going to have to do with this is create like an individual spell where it will summon an actual fortification. The question then becomes, what are we summoning and what are the specifications for it? And I don't know. This is something that we'll have to go into much more detail another time. So, fortify. I am literally going to just put in here, summon a fortified structure. I mean, that is essentially what we're doing, right? According to the card, it enchants a land. We're going to summon a structure on the land. Bingo bango, it's the same thing. I think that's really good. That's enough. We can move on. We'll come back to that later when we have to actually make the fortification. We'll determine how big it is, how hard it is, how many people can fit in it, what does it have available to you, because fortifying isn't just going to mean like an actual thing, it's going to be able to fortify people inside of it. Again, we'll get back to it. Next, Frenzy. Alright, Frenzy is another ability that was featured in Future Sight. And again, it only appears on 2 cards. I'm noticing a theme here. We're getting into the obscure. And as we get more obscure, we're going to come across more and more cards that just don't really need to have a whole lot of stuff done to them. Frenzy. So it's a triggered ability. It says, whenever this creature attacks and isn't blocked, it gets +N+0 until end of turn. Again, blocking isn't a thing, so we have to replace block with attack of opportunity, meaning that when this creature attacks and doesn't provoke an attack of opportunity, it gets +N+0. Now, of course, it's a sliver! Why wouldn't it be? It does say here under the history, Mark Rosewater has tried to put Frenzy in numerous sets, but play design is not a fan, stating that the play pattern is just not that fun. I tend to agree because it only triggers if you don't block, and let's face it, if you know something is going to get plus on its damage if you don't block it, you're going to block it. And given that its toughness doesn't go up, there's no real incentives not to block it. So, of course, it's on the Frenzy sliver. All slivers get Frenzy 1. Whenever they attack, they get +1/+0 until the end of your turn. So we can make this really simple. On attack, if the creature does not provoke an attack of opportunity, I can spell increase strength +1 and this is going to be very brief. So I guess we can literally just say until the end of turn. It's basically the same thing that it did before. And depending on like what it is, because like this only is going to affect slivers. So if the sliver is... If it's got an odd number power, then it might get +1 damage on its attack. If it's a melee attack, and most of them probably are. All in all, it's not a great... it's not a great ability. Alright, what's next? Gravestorm. I feel like I'm already going to hate this. Alright, Gravestorm is a triggered keyword ability. It's similar to Storm, except instead of counting the number of spells cast that turn, it counts the number of permanents put into the graveyard from the battlefield that turn. Again, this only appears on 2 cards. And given that it's things that go into the graveyard, I feel like this is not going to be that significant. But it still could be useful. It is unlikely to ever be reused since it has the same problem as Storm. And the only example given is Bitter Ordeal. Again, with that same hateful card design that I just cannot stand. So it's got Gravestorm. Whenever you play this spell, copy it for each card that was put into the graveyard. We can make this work, though. We can just say, you may copy this spell without using additional spells per day. Well, I'm just going to say spell uses for each spell you cast. Not on the prior turn. For each spell you cast and each creature that died under your control since your last turn. Now that's a little specific, but essentially if you're in a fight, you're in combat, and you have an instant to play, then if you could play an instant since your last turn or any of your creatures died, which would send them to the graveyard, you may then copy that spell multiple times, which means this would actually not be the worst card in the world. It's one of those things that would be very, very situational, but you could hold it in reserve. Sure, you can play it once, but you may sit there and say, well, I've got this spell, and sure. And it says, search a target's library for a card and remove that card from the game. That player then shuffles his or her library. Since you can't really search your opponent's deck because they don't have a deck, this would instead target their spells per day. It essentially would allow you to burn one of their spells per day, but if they killed one of your creatures, then on the next turn you could burn 2 of their spells per day. Maybe. PC Accordance says, I still think that the graveyard should just be the battlefield, and as far as instant sorceries or enchantments go, something like Echo or Memory of the spell cast. I mean, that is actually kind of... Oh, that's hard. So it says Gravestorm. When you play this card, copy it for every permanent that was put into the graveyard this turn. You bring up an actually interesting point there, enchantments. Because let's say that I had a goblin out. Let's say that goblin was enchanted with something. I can't think of an enchantment off the top of my head, so you have to just work with me here. But it's got an enchantment. If my goblin died, the goblin and the enchantment go with it. That's technically 2 cards. Which means that Gravestorm should trigger twice. Oh, I hate these spells. I really do. It's not that it can't be done, it's just that it is overly complicated. It's overly complicated. At least, you know, it's not really overly complicated for Magic the Gathering. It's actually pretty easy. It makes sense for them, but translating it is hard. I'm going to stick with what we've got now just because I don't know if the enchantments are really going to be that important. I mean, I am talking about a very niche card and a very niche situation. I think I'm going to leave it as is and I'm going to move on. But I don't like it. I don't feel good about it. I don't. Actually, I think I can actually change this. I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna delete that. So you may copy the spell without using additional spell uses for each spell you cast that ended since your last turn. That right there might do it. So, if you had a creature on the field and that creature dies, that spell has ended. If that creature was enchanted, that enchantment has ended. If you played an instant between your turns, that instant has ended. Any spell of yours that has ended since the last turn, we'll give you a copy. And maybe that's the solution to our graveyard. Maybe instead of having a pile of things, we can replace graveyard with any of your spell or spell effects that have ended either on your turn or since your last turn. The problem I see there is Threshold, which I think we already did. Did we already do Threshold? I feel like we already did Threshold. Maybe we didn't. Peace Unicorn says, except with that wording, it will now include any sorcery and instant, I think. Yes, because I don't think it specifies. It says, Gravestorm means when you cast a spell, copy it for each... Oh, permanent that was put into the graveyard from battlefield this turn. Okay, good catch. Good catch. Is there a way for me to do this without just simply calling them permanents? Let's see. Okay, so not for each spell. I may simply have to specify. So, permanents. Permanents are creatures, artifacts, and enchantments. And land, technically, but we don't have land, so... for each creature, artifact, and enchantment. And not you cast, but you control. So that should do it. You may copy this spell without using additional spell uses for each creature, artifact, and enchantment you control that ended since your last turn. So, this means that if there was an enchanted goblin and that goblin was killed, you get an additional spell use for the creature and for the enchantment. I think that works. I think that just fixed it. Good job. Alright, now we can move on. I feel better about it now. I feel much better about it now. We move on to Poisonous. This one should be easy. Okay, should be. So Poisonous is a keyword ability that uses that allows the use of multiple poison counters. It was introduced in Future Sight, but was designed for Tempest. So, Poisonous N. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player gets N poison counters. I hate this ability. I really do. I hate poison decks. I despise poison decks. Mostly, and I'm going to be honest, mostly because poison counters are, I think, one of the worst things to ever happen in Magic the Gathering, because not only can you deal them, but there are almost no ways to get rid of them. I say almost because there are a few cards that will allow you to cleanse poison counters, but they are so very few and so very specific that there's almost no reason to use them. And if you get caught without them, you're basically done. I really hate poison in Magic the Gathering. So poison's only been printed on 2 cards so far. As it says, there's a black card, there's a green card, but I know that poison as a mechanic is on a whole lot more than just 2 cards. This was Rosewater planting a flag in the ground that poison was going to return one day. He basically just keyworded how poison had always been used in the past. Poison would later return with Infect in Scars. Okay, yeah, it is Infect. Infect has its own issues. Maybe one day Poisonous will get another chance. I hate Poison, I hate Infect, I hate all of them. So there are only two examples here, and of course, one of them is a goddamn sliver. All sliver creatures now have Poisonous 1. Okay, but here's the thing. In Magic the Gathering, Poison and Infect work the same way, and they work differently. So, the way they work... And does it say up here? I don't think it says up here. But I can look right here. Infect. So, Infect is a keyword ability. Okay, so Infect deals -1/-1 counters. And in the form of poison counters to a player. If the player has 10 or more poison counters, they lose the game. Period. Now, in Magic the Gathering, you have 20 hit points starting out. I think you have more when you're playing Commander. But either way, if you get 10 Infect counters or 10 poison counters, you're done. You're done. Game's over. And yeah, Infect is on 56 cards. So, that's not really going to work, because that would be like saying that I have 27 hit points, but the minute that I have 14 counters, I'm dead? Or even more egregious, if I have 10 counters. No, what I think we really need to do is to actually make them poisonous. Because we have poisons. If I come down here in Pathfinder to... I want Game Mastering. And Afflictions. And Poisons. Here we go. There are First off, many different kinds of poisons. There's contact poisons, ingested, inhaled, and injury. How to apply poison, multiple doses of poison, and then we have our actual poisons. Somewhere, here we go, yeah. So, for example, arsenic, because they're in order, alphabetical order. Arsenic is an ingested, it is a fortitude DC of 13, the onset is 10 minutes. The frequency is once per minute for 4 minutes. So if you're going by rounds, that would be, every 10 rounds for 40 rounds. And it does 1d2 constitution damage. The cure for it is only 1 save, which is fine. However, why don't we look at something a bit more diabolical? Would it be under B or L? Oh look, I found TikTok. Brain rot. It's ingested. It has a fortitude DC of 12. The onset, there is no onset. It lasts for 1 minute, and it does 1d2 intelligence damage. Again, TikTok. And it requires 2 consecutive saves, which is why nobody can seem to get off of it. Well, we'll see people get off of it now, because as of today, TikTok is banned. You're not going to see me crying over that. I was looking for something else, though. Oh, there it is. Black Lotus Extract. So everybody knows the Black Lotus. Here's what happens when you make a poison out of it. It's a contact poison, fortitude DC of 20. The onset is 1 minute, and then it lasts for it affects 1 round over 6 rounds. So, you gotta roll those dice. Bam, 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 one after the other. It requires 2 consecutive saves and deals 1d6 constitution damage every time. Let's say that you have the average heroic constitution of 14. If they roll higher than a 2 on every single die, as a matter of fact, let's just say, if they rolled all 3s, that would be 18. Because this happens over 6 rounds. They would need to roll a minimum of 4 2s and 2 3s, and they would kill your average adventurer. Black Lotus Extract is nasty. It's the kind of poison that DMs use if they want you super dead. What I think we need to do is we need to actually turn the poison into something like this. Now, since it requires that you do damage to either the creature or the the planeswalker, I think it has to be an injury poison. Now, the fortitude DC... can simply be... And let me take a look at the other poisonous creature here. The Snake Cult Initiation. Enchant creature is poisonous 3. So whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 3 poison counters. Okay. I think it needs to be an injury poison. The damage that it's going to do. The damage it's going to do needs to be based on whatever the poison is. Now, normally, what we would do is we would take the cost of the card and turn that into the number of dice, and the number in the text, and turn that into the size of the dice. That's how we're doing it with sorceries and such. In which case, the Virulent Sliver would do 1d1 poison damage. So 1. The Snake Cult Initiation, however, would deal 4d3. except that's not how any of these work. All of these poisons deal 1d whatever over a period of time. So instead, what if it was 1d3 over 4 rounds? I think that would be good. I think that would work really well then. So, poisonous. We need to start writing rules here. It's going to be an injury poison. Had to get a drink. It's going to be an injury poison. Next up, the Fortitude DC. So the Fortitude DC is going to be equal to 10 plus... I think it'd be 10 plus the poison number. So 10 plus the poison amount. So, example, for the sliver, it has poison 1. That means that if you were to be hit by the sliver, it would be a DC 11. Generally speaking, that's not exactly a difficult roll. However, that is still going to be pretty much a coin toss. There is a 50% chance or better that you're going to pass this. There's also a really good chance that you could fail it too. Because the way I look at this is very simple. If it's DC 11, and let's say that you are a really strong character, so you've got a 14 in your constitution, and you're playing a fighter, which will give you a +1 to your fortitude. I think it's a +1. Is it a +1? Now I gotta go check. And there's somebody else in the chat. Hello, Z Dragavon. Good to have you here. Fighters, is it a +1 or a +2? It's +2. Okay, so fighters get a +2 to their fortitude save. So if you got a 14 in your constitution and you're a fighter, that's a +4 on your roll at level 1. Now, mind you, for the sliver, what level would you have to be to even cast that? Sliver costs 1. You can grab a sliver at level 1 then. So that means that if you were that level 1 fighter and somebody had a virulent sliver out there, it's going to be a DC 11. You've got a +4, so we'll take 4 off of that. That means you have to roll a 7 or higher to succeed against the poison. Which sounds good, but that is still 1/3 chance of being poisoned. And then it just goes up from there, essentially. The Snake Cult Initiation, since its poison is 3, if you were that same fighter, that means you have to roll a 9 up. It's basically a coin toss. And when we get into actual Infect, we'll use the same rules, but I'm sure that there are Infect cards out there that have much higher infection. I don't know how much higher, but I'm sure there are some. Alternatively, if we wanted to make them more dangerous, I could move it from a 10 to a 15 plus whatever it is, if there's just not a whole lot of cards that really go higher than, say, a 3. We'll revisit this when we get to Infect and see exactly where that takes us. So the Fortitude DC is going to be 10 plus the poison amount. Next is the damage. The frequency is going to equal the mana cost. The damage, I don't even need to write damage. So the damage is going to be equal to the poison number. It's going to be 1d the poison number, but then what kind of damage are we doing? Every single one of these poisons targets a specific ability, generally. Although, this Bloodleaf residue does do HP damage as well as Constitution damage. How common is that? I'm curious. HP damage, it is literally the only example of HP damage on here. I'm inclined to make it HP damage anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to be 1d poison amount HP damage. So again, with the sliver, that means that since the sliver only costs 1 and the poison is 1, it'll do 1d1 damage for 1 round. For the other one, it would be 1d3 damage for 4 rounds. Which is not bad. In fact, I'm sure we'll probably change that. So, but we're going to move on. We're moving on. Next up, transfigure. How do we translate this? Alright. Transfigure, keyword ability similar to Transmute from Ravnica, City of Guilds, though it's playable only if the permanent with Transfigure is on the battlefield, and it can fetch only a creature. Transfigure was introduced in Future Sight. It has only been printed on 1 card so far. Of course it has. Alright, what is it? It's the Flesh Writher. It has Transfigure 3. So it costs you 4 to play, but sacrifice it, or pay 3, sacrifice this creature, search your library for a creature card with the same converted mana cost as this creature, and put that card into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Transfigure only as a sorcery. I don't see the point. I mean, I guess you can search your library for the card, which I guess is the point. You don't necessarily have to have it in your hand, you can find it as long as it costs 4 or less. Or no, wait, it doesn't even say that. It has to be the same. It has to cost 4. This is very niche. And also, pointless, I think. See, here's the thing. This is okay in Magic the Gathering because of the way Magic the Gathering works. You could have a card buried in your library, and you'd be able to pull it out. However, remember how I said that there's another list of keywords we're going to have to go through, because we need to go through all the keyword actions. Inside of here, I'm sure that I'm going to find, yep, right there, search. We don't need search. Because of the way this game is going to work, you know all of the spells that you know. There are not going to be the same limitations on how many you can play. And clearly, you're not going to need to actually find any of these spells, you simply know them. If you know 4 spells at level 2, you have access to those 4 spells at any given time. So, anything that says search is kind of pointless. Now, it does say that this is essentially the creature version of Transmute. We did Transmute. What did we do for that one? For Transmute, we literally said it was not applicable. We're going to do the same thing for Transfigure. Not applicable. If you still want to get this card, if you still want this Flesh Writher, you can have it. But the ability literally does nothing for us. Alright, moving on. Next is Champion. So Champion is a keyword ability that allows you to upgrade one permanent into another, representing a powerful creature taking the place of another to fight in its stead. A permanent is championed by another permanent if the latter exiles the former as a direct result of the champion ability. Alright, let's see what this actually does. It was introduced in Lorwyn, in which it featured on a cycle of non-rare shapeshifter cards and on 3 uncommon. There's only 12 cards with this on it. I want to see an example. Changeling Berserker. So the Changeling Berserker costs 4 to play, excuse me. It's got Changeling. This card is every creature type at the same time. It has haste and champion a creature. So when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you exile another creature you control. When this leaves the battlefield, that creature returns to the battlefield. This is actually not the worst thing. I can kind of understand what they're doing here, especially since can you play this as an instant or only as a sorcery? Does it tell me? It's a triggered ability. Let's see. Rulings. A creature's own champion ability won't allow you to exile that creature. If a creature with champion leaves the battlefield before it enters the battlefield, it leaves the battlefield and will do nothing. So you just basically blocked it. I think. Anyway. I can't tell. Is this an instant or a sorcery? Reading. Exile card remains in exile. Keyword limit. I can't tell. And the Thought Weft Trio comes in with First Strike and Vigilance, but not Haste. So it seems like Haste is not associated with Champion. I don't know. Since it doesn't say anything, I have to just kind of assume that it's a sorcery ability. I think, anyway. Alright, either way. I think that we can actually just kind of copy this one word for word. There's not much that we really need to change. When this creature enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you exile another creature you control. When the creature leaves the battlefield, that card returns to the battlefield. We have to change a couple of things because they're not cards, they're going to be creatures. But all the same, that wording is pretty good. So let's go ahead and paste that in. We'll default format that and then format painter it. There we go. So when this enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you exile another creature you control. When this leaves the battlefield, hold on a second. Here we go. That creature returns to the battlefield. Alright, had to fix that. There we go. Okay. It seems pretty simple. Alright, next up is Changeling, and this one should also be super simple. This is a characteristic defining keyword ability. It only appears on shapeshifter cards and grants those cards all creature types. Which, again, I mean, what more do you really need to say? So, we have, in the bestiary, here it is, bestiary. We can sort by alphabetically, CR, terrain, and even by type. So we have aberrations, animals, constructs, dragons, fays, humanoids, magical beasts, monsters, humanoids, oozes, outsiders, plants, undead, and vermin. That's what we have in Pathfinder. There's a lot more creature types in Magic the Gathering, but either way, this works. Because we're just going to be able to... we'll just be able to add to that list. We can add all the Pathfinder creature types to all the Magic the Gathering creature types, and it just works. Alternately, though, there is one thing that we could consider. There is one thing we could consider, because these are shapeshifters. And so, let me find something right here. Let me find something real quick. Because... we actually do have shapeshifters who are an actual race. Although this is third party, so I may not use that. Never mind. That one's bad. Shapeshifter Ranger. Okay, so there's no specific shapeshifter. I do know one thing that we have, though. Changelings. And these are also a race. And I know you can't see this because it's on a different page. I thought I had a creature thing for this. But changelings are their own subtype. They're humanoids, but they are their own subtype. So, yeah, if I was to come into here, look into humanoids, and subtypes, we can come down to here, changeling. And so this gives you the examples that we need. So yeah, this changeling is a lawful neutral medium humanoid subspecies changeling. We could make it so that the creature simply has that, but I don't think it means quite the same thing. Yeah, okay. Here, the only problem I see with it is this. So, what we could say is that it is every creature type at once. The problem with that is that there are some very powerful types that would imply. For example, if we said that it was every creature type, and here I thought this was going to be easy. Here's the problem with that. All creature types. If we get into aberrations, so let's just say that this is every creature type. That means that technically speaking, it would have access to all of these abilities, which means that it would gain dark vision for 60 feet, as well as be proficient with natural weapons and whatever armor it tends to work with. It would be an animal. It would also be a construct. Now, why is that important? Well, because constructs possess the following traits. They have no constitution score. They are immune to all mind effects, that's charms, compulsions, morale effects, patterns, and phantasms. They are immune to bleed, disease, death, necromancy, paralysis, poison, sleep, stunning. They cannot heal damage, but they can be repaired. They are not subject to ability damage, ability drain, fatigue, exhaustion, energy drain, or non-lethal damage. They are immune to anything that requires a fortitude save. Unless, of course, it also works on objects. They are not at risk of death from massive damage. However, they also don't bleed out. If you reduce a construct to 0 hit points, it's gone. They cannot be raised or resurrected. They are hard to destroy. They gain bonus hit points based on their size. They do not breathe, eat, or sleep, which contradicts up here. Animals breathe, eat, and sleep. So do aberrations. So, again, I don't know how we're supposed to do that, because do they gain all of these traits? Or do they not? I could specify that they are every race, or that they are every creature type, but do not gain all creature traits, which would be probably the easiest way to do it. Should that be the way we do it? I think that's the way we should do it then. Yeah, we'll do it that way. So, creature is considered every creature type, but does not gain all creature traits. Any spell or ability that targets a specific creature type, no, not that targets, that affects a specific creature type. I can't spell. Affects this creature. There. PC Unicorn says, for this I would think that it would only be that creature type if they are that creature type at that moment. I agree, and I like it. However, the problem with that is super complicated to like a level that I don't think you really comprehend. Because that means that for whatever creature it is, you would have to declare in the moment what kind of creature type it was, and then technically speaking, you would have to change these things. For example, aberrations here. Aberrations have a D8 hit die. They get a base attack bonus equal to 3/4 their total hit dice, so medium progression. They have goodwill saves. They have skill points equal to 4 plus their intelligence modifier. They have dark vision to 60 feet. They have natural weapons. Unless they're humanoid, in which case they get simple weapons. Proficient with armor if they can. And they breathe, eat, and sleep, which is great. But again, if I scroll down here to the construct, the construct has a D10 hit die. A base attack equal to its hit dice, so fast progression. It doesn't have any good saving throws. It only gets 2 skill points plus its intelligence modifier. And again, they have no constitution score. They're immune to all of this stuff. You would have to be able to switch your character on the fly to embody any one of these creature types. And while that is not impossible, it is absolutely unreasonable. Again, like if you had a set amount or a set collection of creature types that you wanted to use, and you as a player could prepare a specific character sheet for that creature depending on which type you wanted it to be, I might allow that. But in general, like, that's way above and beyond. I mean, I can't even get my players to write note cards. And I've literally tried that. I've gotten tired of players who play magic casters who can't remember their spells. Like, if you play a wizard, okay? you play a wizard. Or, technically, if you play a wizard, sorcerer, druid, cleric, paladin, ranger, any class that has spells. And this is a minor tangent, but this needs to really be said. I should never, if you're playing a magic caster and it's your turn, I should never hear you say, I don't know what it does, let me look it up. This is your character. You should know what spells you have and what they do. There should be no reason that anybody ever has to wait on you to look up a spell. Now, that doesn't say this doesn't happen. I mean, I have to look up spells a lot of the time too, just to make sure that I'm getting it right. And if you're only trying to make sure that you've got the spell correct, that is very understandable. But I have had players, and this even gets more general. Like if you're playing a tabletop game and you're taking turns, you should know what you are going to do when your turn comes up. You should never say, okay, it's my turn, what do I want to do? You should have been thinking about this on everyone else's turn. You should have been paying attention and watching. And PC Unicorn says new players. Wrong. I have seen experienced players do this. Because it is a bad behavior that was never corrected. On everyone else's turn, they're getting a snack, they're getting a drink, they're texting on their phone, they're doing whatever, they're not paying attention. And so when it comes around to their turn, they sit there and say, okay, where is everybody? Did you get hit last turn? What's your hit points at? There was another guy here. What happened to him? Pay attention. Know what you're going to do when your turn comes around so that I don't have to wait on you, your fellow players don't have to wait on you. It is not a big responsibility for you. It's a very small responsibility, but it is still your responsibility. Now, if you play a magic caster, you have a little bit more responsibility. You have to know what your spells are. And here's the thing about that. I have told my players, and I don't require this, I'm not going to hold anybody responsible if they don't do this, but when we come down here to these spell lists, and I'm just going to pick one here, Grasp, sure. Right here, this is the spell block. Up here, there's a name, and you can see the different schools it belongs to, but that's not important. What is important? Casting time, components, range, target, duration, saving throw and resistance, and what does it do? This is what you need to know. And what I've told my players, any player who has ever played a wizard before, but even if you're a sorcerer, get some 3x5 note cards. Okay? Just get some 3x5 note cards, especially if you are a wizard. And write down your spells. Make a literal spell book out of 3x5 note cards. If you have Grasp in there, at the top of it, just put Grasp. And then you can just go line by line. Casting time is one immediate action. It is a verbal component. The range is personal. The target is you. The duration is instantaneous. The saving throw is spell resistance. And then just write a brief description that you can understand. You don't have to copy it word for word, but just a brief description so that you know. And then, at the beginning of the day when you prepare your spells, go through your stack of note cards and literally just pull out the spells for that day. That way, you've got them. They're right here. And if you remember one spell multiple times, just set the note card down there and put a dice on top of it. technically a die, but whatever. And you can use the die to keep track of the number of uses you have of that spell. This is a very, very simple thing that you can do as a magic casting player to help you keep track of, number one, what spells you have available, number two, how many spells you have available, and number three, you have a quick reference here. And PC Unicorn says they actually sell these now. I know they sell them. But I'm very cheap. Actually, it's not that. I'm not very cheap. I'm very poor. Please subscribe to the channel and join as a member. But the point is that you can get a pack of 3x5 note cards and do this yourself. I have recommended this to every single Magic player that I have ever had. And would you like to take a guess at how many people have actually done it? Bagel. Okay? Nobody has ever done it. Even though it is one of the best tricks ever. Which is why I get back to this one. Making it so that a changeling could become any creature type, I think is a fantastic idea, and I love it. Because that means if you had a changeling character and you needed it to be like, or you wanted it to be a dragon, not that you need it to be, but you wanted it to be a little dragon. That's great. I love it. However, you would need a stat block with this in mind. And I think that is just way too much to expect out of a player. Instead, I think if we make it so that it is considered every creature type, like up here, like we said here, you get to be every creature type. You do not get all the creature traits, which solves the entire problem for us. However, any spell or ability that affects a specific creature type will affect this creature. So, if we're using something like a sonic attack, and constructs are uniquely vulnerable to sonic attacks, it would affect your creature with the extra damage. It is essentially going to make that creature very, very vulnerable because it's going to have every vulnerability, but it's going to have none of the benefits. That doesn't mean you can't use it, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad. A lot of these changeling cards come with different abilities. Let's take a look. The Woodland Changeling here. Let's see. It's a Woodland Changeling, it's a 2/2, and it's literally just a changeling. It doesn't get anything special for it. What about the Crib Swap? Changeling, exile target creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. So, I mean, there you go. If you're up against another Planeswalker and they have another creature, and it would have to be another Planeswalker because you couldn't do this like a real person. If you're up against bandits, I don't think you'd be able to exile a bandit and replace it with a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter creature token. That doesn't... I don't think that makes sense. Maybe I'm wrong on that one? Am I wrong on that one? I'm not sure. Either way, that's one of those things that I think I'll deal with when the actual situation comes up. But I think we can call Changeling done. Okay, running out of time here. We're moving on to Evoke. Evoke is a keyword ability that allows a player to pay an alternative cost for a creature spell that possesses the ability. However, if the evoke cost is paid, the creature is sacrificed when it enters the battlefield. Interesting. So Evoke was introduced in Lorwyn and expanded upon in Morningtide. There's 29 cards with Evoke on it. It is the signature card of the 5-color elementals. It began in design as a basic mechanic to allow an instant or sorcery to become a creature if an extra cost was paid, but this was changed to its current form due to rule limitations. All creatures with Evoke have enters the battlefield ability, followed by those in the Morning Tide having all leaves the battlefield effects. So let's take a look at the example. The first example they have is the Wisp Mare. Sure, why not? It's a white card, costs 2+ white. It's a 1/3, it's flying. When it comes into play, destroy target enchantment, or you can evoke it. If you evoke it, you may play this card for this spell for its evoke cost. When you do, sacrifice it when it comes into play. So eventually, or no, not eventually, essentially, you're playing the card or the creature as a spell, not a spell into a creature. If I look at the next one, the Muldrifter. It's a blue card, it costs 4+ blue, it's a 2/2, it's got flying. When it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, or you can evoke it for 3, in which case you just draw 2 cards. Again, I don't know how draw is going to necessarily work, so we're gonna think on that one. But evoke seems to be pretty easy, actually. So, when we pay for evoke, oh, we gotta actually think about this one. This is actually going to be really interesting, because remember, we don't necessarily have a limit on the number of creatures that we can summon. We're limited to our number of spells per day. That means that if you were to load up on Evoke Creature, you would essentially have both spells and creatures at your disposal. You could have a whole bunch of these Wisp Mares, and essentially, if you were up against a Planeswalker who had a lot of enchantments, you could just evoke the Wisp Mare and keep destroying their enchantments. At the same time, though, you still have creatures that you can summon. They do double duty. And you can do this as many times as you want. Alright, so evoke. How are we going to phrase this? If you do, sacrifice it when it enters the field. The problem is they compared and contrasted this to Morning Tide. Or no, wait, no. It was all creatures in Lorwyn have entered the battlefield, followed by Morning Tide, where they all have leave the battlefield effects. But I think they do the same thing. Yeah, so let's see, creature ability takes effect, but the creature never enters the... Oh, I don't like the way that's worded. How do I want to phrase this? This is the complicated part. How do I phrase this in a succinct way while still capturing the message? Creature effect triggers the creature does not, or does not, the creature is not summoned. I think that should work. Whether it's or when the creature comes into play, whether the creature is not in play, or whether the creature leaves play. Either way, the effect still triggers. The only thing is... No, actually, counter cards would still work just fine even with this. You couldn't unsummon it because it's not technically summoned yet. Unsummon has to be after the creature is in play, so after the stack has resolved. Unsummon and counter are not the same thing. Or actually, now that I think about it, unsummon is literally just the name of the card. If you read the card, it says return. And return, I'm sure it's going to be in this list. Is it in this list? Activate, attach, create, double, exile, mill, play, reveal, sacrifice. Investigate, explore, surveil. No, it's actually not in here. At least I don't see it in here. Okay, well, never mind. Either way, return would just give you back your spell per day. But yeah, I think this works. So, creature effect triggers, the creature is not summoned. I think that's super simple and it's comprehensive enough. I think we can move on. Next is Hideaway. We're just trucking today. So Hideaway is the ability created by Aaron Forsythe that gives special access to a card in the library when linked with a second ability. It was featured in Lorwyn, but only on a rare cycle of cards. After a single card revisit during Modern Horizons, it got a full revisit in Streets of New Capenna. It is on 14 cards, which isn't a lot, but it's more than one, which is what we've seen in some of the other cards. So it says, when a permanent enters the battlefield, at that time you may look at the top N cards of your library, exile one face down, and put the rest of the bottom of your library in any order. Usually a second ability in the card interacts with the exiled card when certain conditions are met, allowing it to be cast without paying the cost. So let's take a look at what we got. The Mosswort Bridge. This is a land with Hideaway 4. So look at the top 4 cards of your library, exile 1, put the rest in the bottom. So we can tap this thing for 1 green mana, or we can pay 1 and tap it, and we can play the exile card without paying the mana cost if the creatures you control have a total power of 10 or greater. I mean, I don't see any reason not to do that. The total power of 10 or greater might be a little tricky. Or there's the Watcher for Tomorrow. So it costs 2 to play. It's a 2/1. It's got Hideaway. Let's see. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it does, look at the top 4 cards of your library. Exile 1 face down, put the rest in the bottom. When Watcher for Tomorrow leaves the battlefield, put the exile card into its owner's hand. Okay, the into the owner's hand thing isn't really going to work because we don't have a hand. However, putting it into the battlefield, that is something that we can do. And this is actually very similar to a spell that we already have. So, let's see. Can I just go back? Yeah, here we go. Contingency. Here's Dead Man's Contingency. This spell functions like Contingency except noted above. The spell also only comes into effect after your death and works only with certain spells. The companion spell triggers 1d6 rounds after your death. All decisions made involving the companion spell must be made when Dead Man's Contingency is cast, including messages and recipients for spells like Magic Mouth or Sending. So we already have spells that are contingencies. And in this case, Dead Man's Contingency is literally what we're talking about here with some of these. So for Hideaway, here's what we need to do. We need to declare a spell that spell takes effect when the Hideaway criteria are met. So you have to declare the spell, you have to know what it is ahead of time. Now, interestingly, when we look at these, it doesn't necessarily say what it is. For the Mosswort Bridge, it just says exile one card face down, put the rest on the bottom of your library. It doesn't say what it has to be. For all we know, you could have put a land there. And so when you pay 1 and tap the land, you get another land and it automatically goes into play. For the Watcher of Tomorrow, it says exile one face down, put the rest of the body in your library. We could do that with a land too. We could also do it with a very, very large creature, which, now that I think about it, this could be a very, very problematic ability. Now, this one, the Watcher for Tomorrow, is not necessarily a broken ability because it has to go into your hand. But the Mosswort Bridge, if you had a green creature that cost 12 to play, and you exiled that card, that means that technically speaking, on turn 1, you could play the Mosswort Bridge. On turn 2, you play a forest. You tap the forest to tap the Mosswort Bridge. And if you had a creature there that cost 12 to play, and you exiled that card, that card that cost 12 to play now comes into play. This has room to be abused. And so while I'm not necessarily going to put a restriction on it, I'm not going to do that. I think it is worth bearing in mind that this is going to be one of those spells that is going to be heavily, heavily restricted by the GM. And it has to be restricted by the GM just for the sake of everything. It's got to be. There's a card that I had. What is it? Hold on a second. Here we go. I needed to get my deck for a second, and I don't even know if it's in this deck. Is it in this deck? I don't think it is. No. It is not in this deck. Okay, maybe I can find it. I think I remember the name of it. Equipment, no. Here we go. If I remember right, I think it's the Inferno Elemental. Yeah, here we go. Inferno Elemental. And you might be asking yourself, what are we talking about here? What does it even matter? What even is an Inferno Elemental? Well, I'm going to tell you. The Inferno Elemental is one of the meanest cards that I have seen in a long time. Because the Inferno Elemental is a 4/4 that costs 6 to play. On the face, that seems bad, but you have to read the text. So whenever the Inferno Elemental blocks or becomes blocked by creatures, or by a creature, it deals 3 damage to that creature. So we have to do some considerations here. We have to translate a few words. First things first. So obviously it doesn't block because we don't block in this game. Block is an attack of opportunity. So if the Inferno Elemental either takes an attack of opportunity or is the subject of an attack of opportunity, it deals 3 damage. But it doesn't just do 3 damage. Remember, we are using the mana cost of the card for the number of dice and the number of damage for the size of the dice. Meaning that if it either takes an attack of opportunity or becomes the target of an attack of opportunity, it's going to do 6d3 damage to that creature. That is a fair amount of damage. I bring this up because with this hideaway thing, you could literally get this thing out on turn 2. Technically speaking, even if you were in a green deck and you had the Inferno Elemental in there, because you don't have to pay the mana cost, you could put anything in there. Anything at all. I think this one is ripe for abuse. At least it's kept in check somewhat in Magic the Gathering because you never know what's on top of your deck. But you don't have a deck. As a Planeswalker in Pathfinder, you can simply declare whatever spell you have. I'm going to keep an eye on this one. I don't see a reason to change it, but there's definitely a risk there. Okay, we're almost out of time. So, let's see if we can get one more in here. We'll do Prowl. Alright, Prowl is an alternative cost that appears on some rogue creature or kindred cards. It's only appeared on 10 cards total. It was introduced in Morningtide. You may cast the card for its Prowl cost if you dealt combat damage to a player the current turn with a creature that shared a creature type with the card with Prowl. All Prowl cards have the subtype of Rogue, with other types being 3 goblins and 1 fairy. There are also 4 sorceries and 1 instant, all with the kindred type of Rogue. Prowl returned in Zendikar Rising Commander decks with Enigma Thief, adding Sphinx to its types. The first red dinosaur Prowl card was printed in the Jurassic World collection, which we can ignore because I'm not doing the franchise sets. It is very niche, though. It's very niche. So we've got this Morsel Theft here. It's a black card, costs 4 to play, and it's a sorcery. Okay, I gotcha. So Prowl 1, you may cast it for its Prowl cost if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with a rogue. I don't see a reason why we have to necessarily change this. We just need to adapt the wording a little bit to make it a little bit more generic. So for Prowl, we are going to paste this. We're going to default format it. We're going to grab the format painter up here. And just say, you may cast this card for its Prowl cost. Or cast this for its Prowl cost if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with not necessarily a rogue, but with the specified creature type. Now, it did say that there were some goblins in there, and I'm familiar with goblins. You can get a whole bunch of goblins out, and as long as one of them does damage, then we're good. And in this case, morsel theft, you lose, or the target player loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. Or in this case, because it does cost, it does cost 4. Now that's interesting because, again, this is an instance where, because it is a sorcery, the number of dice that it does would be determined by the mana cost, and the damage would be dealt by the number on the card. We would still get to use the 4, so long as the prowl was, even if the prowl was met. It's not how much you cast it for, it's going to be the actual cost of the spell. So it would still do 4d3 worth of damage, and you would gain 4d3 hit points. And I think that'll work out well. Okay, so with that one done, quick recap. We started with Suspend, and after that we went through, let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's a new record. We're up to number 76, and there's only 176, so there's literally only 100 left. We may be able to skip some of these, though, because we're getting into some that are just, they're just wrong. Like, for example, down here, there's living metal and more than meets the eye. I know what those are. Those are from the Transformers set, and I'm not doing the franchise sets. So I know those for a fact are going to be gone. And I'm sure that we're going to come across a lot more. So we still have a long way to go, but I think the further down we get, the faster they're going to go. And so that's going to make our job a lot easier. But that is all for today. I've been considering, and let me know what you think about this. I normally keep these streams at about 2 hours long, but I could keep going. I can't keep going today because I have a very, very busy day today. And looking outside, shoveling snow is going to be one of those things I'm going to have to do because it is coming down like a mother out there. But I have been considering the idea of perhaps doing a longer stream where we could sit down here and knock out maybe 20 or 30 of these in one sitting. Is that something that anybody would be interested in? Is it something that anybody would tolerate? Or should we just keep it like this? I'm not sure. Either way, though, maybe I'll throw it up on the Discord. Maybe I can put up a poll or something. I'm not sure. But I'm considering it. Just because I enjoy doing this. I mean, I'm having a blast. And I could keep doing this all day if I didn't have other things to do. Other videos to record, snow to shovel, things like that. So we'll see if there's any interest in doing a longer tabletop stream where we can get through more of these, because these are taking a long time. And I knew that they would. I knew they would. It's not a surprise. So I'll see what the interest is in doing that, and we'll move appropriately on it. Otherwise, though, I guess we'll just keep on as we're doing. So, if you want to see where we go next with all these keywords and how we're going to make this all work, because it is challenging, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, that way you get notified every time these videos come out. If you know somebody else who's also into either Pathfinder, which I realize is a shrinking number of people these days since the owners decided to get political, but if you are interested in Pathfinder, or you're interested in Magic the Gathering, which now I think about it has also gotten political. They all have to get political, don't they? Either way, if you're interested in either one of those, come to me. I will not discriminate against you, okay? Come here. Enjoy this. Otherwise, though, if you just like what I'm doing, you like this, leave a like on the video. You want to leave comments, you can do that too. If you want to join the Discord, though, you can do that as well. There's a link down there. It works. I have confirmation that it works. So you can come and join that, and you can chat with us too. You can tell me what I did wrong. You can send memes. We love memes. Send more memes. And if you want to play with us, you have to join the Discord and go to the Behind the Screen channel to let me know what game you want to play and what your availability is. Once I get enough people to start a game, I'll start that game. If I have to find other people to GM the game, I will make it work. I will find a way. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take a break. So thank you everyone for coming. I hope to see everybody again next week. And until then, take care.